Artists. Artists, artists. Auteur theory is the concept that in film, an artist's filmic influence is so recognisable and distinct that you can see their mark in a film. Despite factors like studio interference and the collective process, it's the idea that I can sit down and watch a Tarantino, a Hitchcock or a Spielberg movie and tell it is a film of theirs, through the visuals, recurring themes, and signature marks alone. I've used it myself many a time, analysing Miyazaki, Hitchcock and Tarantino, and these editorials alone. I really like it. And it's a really easy and fun way to view a director's career by just analysing their filmography, as if they've gone on a journey. The question is, of course, who is an auteur? Who gets to be classed as the artist in the world of film? The modern filmmaking world we live in is in fact hugely catered towards directors. And that's okay. Directors are largely the project leader who gets the most amount of creative control, so to that extent it makes sense. The books I've compiled and researched are almost entirely director based. There's no books that can be found about microfeatures with a specific name attached. There's no book on the art of lighting of Jack Cardiff, no book on the art design or actual directorship of many famous Tim Burton films. Greg Toland doesn't get his name on the front of a book in Lights. All these famous contributors to film, and almost no solid recognition for their works. And that's pretty messed up. It's directors and directors alone who get to be the cover stars. And maybe this is because of the mindset of the auteur theory. Let's rewind a bit. Auteur theory was advocated by a Frenchman, François Truffaut, a film critic/director who viewed cinema through the eyes of the French New Wave. It was a movement that came out of the events of post-World War II. The French had decades of cinema around the world to catch up on after Germany had shut off outside world media. Whilst they were years behind, this was special because we had a new set of eyes analysing cinema in a way that we couldn't. Auteur theory was one of the results of this movement. They could objectively analyse directors, creators like Renoir, Hitchcock and Kurosawa, who were distinctive in an era of identically uniform films. Over the years it was developed and accepted as a mainstream analysis tool to further the study into the journey. Auteur theory, in a sense, is applying the artistry and signature found in other forms of classical art, like paintings and literature, but the thing is with them, they only have a singular name behind them, and films are more of a collective group effort, and so you can't really sign a film with one signature like some people think Hitchcock can. But then when you think about it, that is the entire thought process behind auteur theory. Maybe the most unfairly overlooked filmmaker of all time, though, is Greg Toland, of the greatest film of all time, Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane's cameraman and cinematographer was Greg Toland, the man behind the visuals of the greatest film of all time. And that's not just my opinion, it reigned as the greatest piece of cinema in sight and sound for over 40 years. It is the most acclaimed and credit-worthy film of all time. Credit that largely went only to one figure. History remembers Citizen Kane as the baby of Orson Welles. The famous actor-director who, through records and interviews with cast, claims to be entirely responsible for the end product. Whilst it is undeniable that Kane is predominantly his, being both the main actor and director, he becomes more of a face, a mascot, than anything else. Due to his prestigious presence and self-promotion, history largely forgets anybody else involved, even those who may be responsible for the actual technological feats and wonder which the film is today. Enter Greg Toland. Whilst Welles may be the talent and the face behind it, one thing he was not was a pioneer. Many of the technological and filmmaking feats found in Citizen Kane that it's actually, Citizen Kane is penned for, such as the presence of ceilings, multi-layered sets, visual illusion trickery, and deep focus, are in fact not of Welles' design and in fact present in previous works of Toland's. Suddenly, this credit goes immediately to Greg Toland, by default. Deep focus in particular is very interesting. Right now, Spider-Man is in focus. If we shift the focus, we get a grubby terrapin tank. Deep focus is the idea that both can be in focus at the same time. It was camera trickery and something amazing for the time it was released. It's definitely one of the most significant things about Citizen Kane, and it turns out it's not even Citizen Kane's. Cinematographers do not have a face, or even a voice in the reception of a film, and yet Toland's influence still managed to come through, to be recognisable to those with a keen eye years later. Crew members on the set are documented with less than stellar opinions on the Holy One Wells, and with the way he uses and credits them, it's not hard to see why. Kane was Wells' directional debut, and whilst making a film with this scope and infamy for a first picture isn't half bad at all, it's also incredibly unlikely he was able to pioneer it all by himself. Just, what are the chances of that? And so, why does the world act like he did do it by himself? Without his experienced contacts, can a newbie really make the greatest film of all cinema history? Probably not. It's because we live in a director-centric world. One where we can overlook the fact that Spielberg's indebted to composer John Williams. That Hitchcock would be a shadow of himself without his wife Alma.
They were professional collaborators. He wouldn't do anything without asking her.
And that Tarantino films are just a collage of film and genre that have come before him. These are some of the most iconic auteurs. History just prefers to create icons. Put a single face up on a pedestal. It's easier, given the collective achievements of others, to a single mascot. It's how show business works, it's how ancient history works. The problem with applying this to an art and people's actual jobs is that it reduces the role of many aspiring creators and artists to the mere role of a technician. Someone who is paid to, hold the camera. Greg Toland, though, is clearly an artist in his own right. He doesn't just hold the camera, he developed and improved throughout his career, even forming a distinctive style, one bright enough to shine through the ego of Orson Welles. By all criteria, he matches the requirements for auteur status. He made Citizen Kane the film that it is. Yet, it is only recently that his career has been given any respect that it deserves at all. And to many, he will remain a nameless face that brought them not only his films, but, like Welles, changed the way all films were made. And this is just one man. Imagine over the years how many people's names and credit has been attributed to other people. Our fixation on directors lies both in critical and commercial films. George Lucas is a prime example of a director being given too much credit and authority. Authorship is naturally deserved for review, original Star Wars, not sure if you've heard of them, which he bent over and he earned that film. You can see behind the scenes just how much effort this man put into the creation of this film. Production was infamously hard. Lucas largely brought that film to life with his own two hands, but now? His legacy and status of being George Lucas has led to him doing almost anything he wants, with little studio and crew resistance, but heavy backlash. An explanation into what made the prequel so infamously hated can be found with a quick venture into the behind the scenes. The main problem being, nobody is questioning the director. He has absolute control and authorship because nobody wants to question the great George Lucas.
Our job is to assemble the team of artists and technicians who will bring George's total vision to life.
Partly because they'd be fired for challenging the man who made Star Wars. And then nothing else good after that. But the thing is, maybe Lucas should have been challenged at some point. Let's give Yoda a lightsaber. Sure thing, boss. Let's create Jar Jar Binks. Yes, sir. Let's make our central conflict two faceless CGI armies.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
My job is to enable him to make sure that he has everything he needs to express himself. That's all a producer can ever expect to do. It's the virtual blueprint for the entire project.
A film cannot be made by one person. Like Wells, Lucas sees it as his vision and his alone, treating everyone around them as workers rather than artists in their own right. The times when our job is most satisfying is when you really are in sync with the director. It is almost like you're trying to crawl into their brain, and it's about the vision, which is what everybody's role on a film is. That was a quote from Alan Lewis, a casting director, and it's true. These days, directors get control over every stage of production, but in the days of Hollywood's studio system, directors were not even allowed to oversee editing. Something unimaginable today with the dependence on post-production. The likes of Peter Jackson, James Cameron, and Michael Bay would have almost no control over their films thanks to factors like CGI. In the older days of film, this authorship power struggle was frequent. Director John Ford had a trick. He would make only one take of each shot, claiming to pre-cut it in his head. The lack of several takes and artistic freedom virtually forced his editors to put together the shots as he had planned.
How did you shoot that?
With a camera.
This is another instance of trained professionals with artistic vision being sidelined into basic manual labourers. As you become aware of how oddly unbalanced the film industry is, you'll see more and more applications in day-to-day life. How current blockbuster Jurassic World is in fact the film of Colin Trevorrow, and the highly billed Spielberg is one of 4 executive co-producers. Yeah, he's still in all the trailers and the promotion, and that maybe half of the famously iconic Tim Burton movies are not even Tim Burton movies at all. When was the last time you saw Henry Selick mentioned for James and the Giant Peach or Nightmare Before Christmas? You know, films that he directed. Since the birth of auteur theory, alternatives have been suggested. A mentor describes a director whose influences clearly originate elsewhere and have no real artistic style or an individual stamp, such as Luc Besson, Peter Jackson, and Charlier Dance. The claim that competent yet non-stylish directors can also be identified for not being identifiable is interesting and ironic in a way of its own. And then, Michael Bay. It can be argued that despite his entirely commercial take on film and his general incompetence of being anything more than a contemporary filmmaker, Michael Bay still retains stamps and bad habits, recognisably one of a Michael Bay production. Features such as monologues, hard to make out CGI, shameless product placement, the army, racial stereotypes, and of course, explosions. These infamous traits are traits all the same, making ironically Michael Bay a seasoned auteur. And what a throne it is! Arguments have been made that screenwriters should be the verified auteur, quite literally being the author of the film. Around the world, directors work closely with writers, whereas in Hollywood, they are seen as more dispensable and a script being optional rather than mandatory. Directors today have been given a freedom. In Hollywood, they mostly work freelance, with the top guns able to select their own projects. But for the most part, in today's climate, it is the director who shapes the film's unique form and style. No acknowledgements to him. Directorship is a huge responsibility, and its form and style that are central to cinema as an art. And so credit is where credit is due. Just not in the place of those who brought their vision to life. Thank you for watching.